They left me at the gas station during our family trip, and I still reached the hotel before them. The sound of the door slam wasn't an accident. "Mom, we'll just grab snacks," my son said, then drove away. Their SUV disappeared down Highway 19, taillights blinking like lies. I stood there, one hand holding my purse, the other holding trust that was already dead. For a moment, I waited, like mothers do. Maybe he'd turn around, maybe she'd remind him. But she was laughing in the passenger seat, and I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a message. The gas pump clicked empty. The boy behind the counter looked nervous. "Ma'am, you need help?" "No," I said softly. "I already helped them too much." I checked my phone. No signal. Just one unread text from my daughter-in-law. "Hope you find your way, Mom." I smiled, slow. "Oh, I will." Because here's the part they didn't plan for. The credit card was in my name. The hotel booking was under my number, and every mile they drove away from me brought me closer to my freedom. By the time they reached the lobby, I'd already be there, smiling with the room key in my hand. Sometimes being left behind is the fastest way to get ahead. Stay till the end. You'll see why leaving me was the worst decision they ever made. The bus to Crescent Bay stopped behind the station with a hiss, like a warning. I walked toward it, heels clicking against the asphalt. The driver squinted through the smoke of his cigarette. "You lost, ma'am?" "No," I said, handing him a crisp bill. "Just heading somewhere people think I won't show up." He shrugged, pocketed the cash, and waved me on. I chose the seat by the window. My reflection stared back. Steady eyes, no tremor. I wasn't a victim tonight. I was logistics in lipstick. The road stretched ahead, empty and clean. I thought about the way my son used to cling to my hand crossing the street. Now he couldn't look me in the eye crossing a dining room. Somewhere between those crossings, I stopped being his mother and became his problem. The driver glanced in the mirror. "You sure you're okay?" I smiled faintly. "I'm more than okay. I'm expected." Half an hour later, city lights appeared. Polished, artificial, like someone's version of success. The bus dropped me near the hotel district. Crescent Bay Grand shimmered at the center of it all, the same one I'd booked under my name. Inside the lobby, I could smell her perfume before I saw her. She was checking in, laughing too loud at something the concierge said, while my son stood beside her, polite, practiced, pretending. I stayed behind a column, close enough to read his expression. He looked relieved. That stung. I waited until they took the elevator. Then I walked to the desk. "I believe there's a reservation under Mrs. W. Harper," I said. The clerk smiled. "Yes, suite 405. You're already checked in." "Perfect," I said. "Could I have a duplicate key?" "Of course." That's the thing about betrayal, and it makes you careful with paperwork. In the elevator, I pressed the button, heart calm, not racing. There's a quiet that comes when you finally stop begging people to love you correctly. The ride up felt lighter than it should have. Room 405 was exactly as I imagined. Too elegant, too staged. My son's suitcase by the wall, her silk scarf tossed over the chair like a flag. I walked in slowly, touched nothing, and left a single earring on the nightstand. Mine. Not a threat. A signature. Then I left, closing the door softly. Across the hallway was my room. Same floor. Better view. From my window, I could see the ocean glinting under the moonlight. Waves didn't crash. They whispered. They always sound like they're keeping secrets. My phone buzzed again. A message from my son. "Mom, where are you? You scared us." I laughed. Scared. The word people use when control slips. I typed back slowly, "I'm where you left me. Don't worry, I'll find my way." Then I turned the phone off. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I made tea using the hotel kettle. The water hissed. Steam curled like memory. Every betrayal, I realized, has its own temperature. His was lukewarm, polite, well-mannered, the kind that says it's for your own good. He must have thought I'd never survive a night without them. He was half right. I wasn't planning to survive it. I was planning to use it. Someone knocked next door. Muffled laughter followed. Her voice again. Her. "You think she'll show up?" His voice answered, low, unsure. "No, she won't." I smiled into my cup. "Oh, sweetheart, I already did." There's a strange power in being underestimated. It gives you time to prepare. I unpacked my purse, wallet, charger, old family photos, and one folded document, the deed to the lake house, the one he made me sign over for tax reasons. I ran my finger along the signature, his, not mine, a perfect forgery. So that was the game. Not just distance, disappearance. Outside, the hallway fell quiet again. I sat on the bed and let the truth settle in. He didn't just abandon me at a gas station. He erased me on paper months ago. This trip wasn't spontaneous. It was an execution of a plan. And now they thought it was complete. I looked out the window one last time before sleeping. The parking lot glowed silver under the lights. Their SUV was there, doors locked, safe, the same way they thought they were. Tomorrow I'd change that, because forgiveness is optional. But consequences? Those come standard. Sleep didn't come that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. When you close your eyes after betrayal, the past sneaks in uninvited. So I let it. It began with small things. Always does. A missing checkbook, a bill I didn't remember signing, my son saying, "Don't worry, Mom. We'll handle it." We. The most dangerous word when love turns corporate. I used to think kindness was insurance, that if you loved people hard enough, they'd never let you shatter. Turns out, kindness is just a signature waiting to be forged. I remembered the afternoon I found the first red flag, literally, a red folder on the kitchen counter labeled Estate Review. Inside were photocopies of my documents. Will, title deeds, even insurance forms. The handwriting at the bottom? Mine. Except I never used round loops in my M's. She did. When I confronted my son, he didn't even look up from his phone. "Mom, Lydia's helping us get organized. You forget things lately." Forget. He said it so easily, like it was already true. That's how betrayal starts. Not with theft, but with narrative. They tell the story enough times. And one day, even you start doubting your own memory. Another flash. Dinner last month. Her hand brushed his shoulder. Casual. Public. She laughed too loud at his joke, then looked at me, not with guilt, but pity, like she'd already inherited the family. My son's phone buzzed during dessert. He looked at it, smiled faintly, turned it face down. I caught a glimpse of the wallpaper. Our family portrait. Cropped. I wasn't in it. Later that night, I went to my study and checked the drawer where I kept the power of attorney papers. Gone. The next morning, he said, "Mom, you misplaced them again." I didn't argue. Some wars are better won in silence, because by then, I knew. The gas station wasn't the beginning. It was the celebration. They'd already buried me on paper. The family trip was just the funeral without flowers. I leaned back against the headboard and laughed under my breath. Imagine raising someone for 30 years and then watching them rehearse your exit with hotel reservations and fake sympathy. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you the gift of invisibility. They thought I was weak. That makes me dangerous. Another flash. The day Lydia joined the family. She hugged me too long, her voice sweet like syrup. "You've done such a great job raising him." Translation: your job is done. She started calling me Mom before she called me Mrs. Harper. Ownership disguised as affection. At first I wanted to believe she loved him, but love doesn't isolate. It integrates. She'd stop me mid-sentence in family talks, answer for him, correct me softly in front of guests. Death by 1,000 courtesies. The last memory hit hardest. A phone call. 2 weeks ago, a banker confirming joint authorization, my name and hers, not his. That's when I started making copies, everything I could, receipts, emails, the house deed, and one small recording on my phone, her voice saying, "Once she's off the documents, the rest is easy." That's why I didn't cry at the gas station, because grief is useless when you have evidence. I rose from the bed, opened my purse, and pulled out the small flash drive I'd kept hidden under the lining. Every file, every document, every signature they thought I wouldn't notice. Right there. Insurance, deeds, transfers. Proof that they planned my disappearance, not just emotionally, but legally. People think revenge begins with anger. It doesn't. It begins with clarity. By the time the sun began rising over Crescent Bay, I knew exactly what came next. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to expose them in public. Not yet. I was going to do something far simpler, something quieter. I was going to let them believe they'd won. Because a clean conscience makes people sloppy, and sloppy people confess. By morning, the hotel smelled of fresh coffee and hypocrisy. I watched them from the lobby cafe, both dressed in vacation ease, white linen, matching sunglasses, matching lies. They didn't see me. Of course they didn't. People rarely look back at what they think they've erased. My son laughed at something Lydia said. He looked happy. That kind of happiness that comes only when you believe there'll be no consequences. I stirred my coffee slowly and smiled. Let him have it. Let him enjoy his freedom. Freedom tastes best before it burns. When they left for the beach, I followed at a distance. Not close enough to be seen, just close enough to study. It's strange how detachment doesn't feel cold. It feels like relief. No more begging to be understood. No more proving I'm still worth love. At the shore, he took her photo. Her hair blowing wild, her laugh rehearsed. I remembered the years I begged him to smile for mine. Now I didn't need his face in any memory. I had the truth, and it didn't need framing. They walked hand in hand down to the pier. From behind, they looked like a couple who'd survived something together. They had me. I went back to the hotel and opened the minibar. One tiny bottle of champagne. I poured it into a coffee cup and toasted the reflection in the mirror. To distance, I whispered. The only thing that ever tells the truth. There's a peace in pretending to forgive someone while quietly removing their oxygen. I began making calls. Polite, transactional, efficient. The bank, the insurance company, the notary who'd always liked me better than my son. I'd like to review my file, I said sweetly, just for my records. Nobody argues with a woman who sounds calm. Calm means control. At lunch, I sat 2 tables away from them. Lydia was scrolling through her phone, whispering. He looked tired now, a little off balance. Guilt always catches up to appetite. I ordered dessert. Something sweet and unnecessary. She hated sugar. He used to. I took a bite and looked directly at them when they glanced my way. The shock on their faces was pure art. He stood halfway up. "Mom?" I lifted my glass. "You left so fast last night, I didn't get to say goodbye." Lydia froze, her fork hovering midair. People think confrontation is loud. It isn't. It's quiet enough to make your pulse sound like a drum. I smiled, gathered my purse, and walked out before he could speak. Timing is power. You leave before they start rewriting the story. Back in my room, I spread the documents across the bed like a puzzle. Every piece of betrayal arranged in order. I didn't hate him. That's what surprised me. Hatred still ties you to someone. Indifference cuts cleaner. For 30 years, I fixed his messes, paid his bills, covered his mistakes. Maybe this was the first time he'd have to fix mine, or at least try. There was a knock on my door. His voice. "Mom, can we talk?" I let him wait, counted to 20, then opened it. Smiling faintly. "Of course. Come in." He looked nervous. Good. Lydia hovered behind him like a shadow that didn't know where to stand. "Mom, last night was weird." We thought you were left behind, I interrupted. Yes, I noticed. He blinked. It wasn't like that. We came back. You were gone. I laughed softly. Came back? How thoughtful. Must have been after the 5th text you didn't send. He swallowed. Look, things have been tense. Lydia was worried about the paperwork? I asked, tone still kind. Or the will? Silence. Beautiful, trembling silence. His face said what his mouth couldn't. Lydia looked at the floor. I stepped closer, motherly again. You know, darling, forgiveness is easy, but forgetting, that's an art. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew the balance had shifted. When they left, I closed the door gently and exhaled. That wasn't closure. It was confirmation. They were scared now, not of what I'd do, but of what I already knew. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. My heartbeat didn't race. My hands didn't shake. This was peace, the kind born from detachment, not denial. By evening, I'd packed. Tomorrow, I'd visit the lawyer I'd called in secret last month. He didn't know it yet, but my son's signature on those forged papers would be his undoing. And Lydia's voice, that sweet syrup, was recorded, word for word. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. They just hadn't noticed who was holding the umbrella. That night, Crescent Bay Grand hosted its weekend dinner buffet, the kind where every plate shines and every smile costs extra. They were there, of course, dressed for peace, performing normalcy. I entered last, not hiding, not announcing, just arriving like someone who belonged, which technically I did. Their table was near the window, candles flickering soft gold. I could see Lydia's hand on his wrist, her diamond catching the light, the same diamond I'd once worn. I didn't walk toward them immediately. Control isn't about timing your steps, it's about choosing when they notice. I took a table nearby and ordered red wine, one glass, the color of warning. When the waiter passed, I slipped a folded note into the tray. Deliver this to the gentleman by the window, I said. He nodded, professional and discreet. I watched as my son opened it. Confusion first, then dread. The note said only 6 words. You forged my name. Twice, remember? He looked around the room. His eyes found me. I smiled, polite, parental. Lydia followed his gaze. Her color drained, whispered something sharp. I took a slow sip of wine. I could almost hear their thoughts clattering like cutlery. How much does she know? What does she have? That's the beauty of information. It's currency that multiplies in silence. They stood up, pretending to head toward the buffet. I intercepted halfway. Going somewhere? I asked lightly. My son's jaw tightened. Mom, not here. Oh, why not here? I said. After all, this is where families share everything, isn't it? Lydia forced a smile. Let's talk privately. Privately? I laughed softly. You two love privacy, especially when lawyers are involved. A couple of heads turned. She leaned in. What do you want? What's mine? I said simply. And an apology that sounds like it means something. He whispered, people are watching. Good, I said. Maybe they'll learn something about gratitude. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend light. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Lydia's hand tightened on his arm. I leaned closer. Don't worry, I said quietly. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm just here to remind you who built you. Then I walked away, leaving their table, their pride, and their fear trembling behind me. I didn't need to make a scene. The seed was planted. Fear does the rest. At the bar, I asked the bartender for water. He nodded toward their table. Everything okay over there? I smiled. Depends who you ask. I stayed until they left, watched them hurry out like people running from their own reflection. When the elevator doors closed behind them, I followed the sound of footsteps up one floor. Their suite door was slightly ajar. Voices inside, "She knows, Daniel," Lydia hissed. "She's bluffing," he said. "She can't prove anything." "Oh, really? Then what about the recording?" A pause. "Wait, what recording?" I leaned against the wall, satisfied. That's the moment you know you've won, when they start confessing to each other just to prove who's more innocent. I left quietly, back to my room, and opened my laptop. The email draft was already written. Subject, "To whom it may concern. Fraudulent signatures and transfer records." Attachments, every file, every screenshot, every recording. Recipient, my lawyer, CC'd to the bank manager. I hovered over send, but I didn't press it. Not yet. Revenge is timing. Send it too soon, and you get satisfaction. Wait, and you get control. At midnight, a knock. Lydia again. Alone this time. Her perfume entered first. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "You've always liked to talk before you take." She sat on the edge of the chair, legs crossed too tightly. "Look," she said, "this has gotten out of hand. Daniel's under pressure. He didn't mean—" "To erase me?" I cut in. "Or to replace me?" She sighed, exasperated. "You're twisting everything. We just wanted to make things easier." "For whom?" I asked softly. Her silence was answer enough. I leaned forward. "You wanted my house, my accounts, my son, and you almost got them. But you forgot one thing." Her voice cracked. "What?" "The woman you thought you buried is the one who owns the shovel." She stood abruptly. "You won't get away with this." I smiled. "I already have." When she left, she slammed the door. Again. Funny how betrayal always sounds the same when it leaves. I stared at the door for a moment, then turned back to the laptop. Pressed send. The whoosh of the email leaving my outbox was quieter than I expected. No lightning, no thunder, just quiet justice. I poured another glass of wine and whispered, "To consequences." Outside, the ocean waves broke against the shore, rhythm steady and endless. Inside, everything they built on lies was starting to crack. Emails, accounts, trust. By morning, their names would be flagged, their signatures questioned, their world audited. And me? I'd be exactly where I belonged. In control. Morning arrived like an apology I didn't owe. I poured coffee, opened the curtains, and watched Crescent Bay wake up. Tourists strolled, gulls screamed, and my son's world quietly began to burn. At 8:17 a.m., my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Harper?" a formal voice asked. "This is Mr. Lowell from Bayside Trust. We've detected irregular signatures on 2 authorizations linked to your account." "Oh?" I said gently. "Irregular? How?" "Well, one of them seems digitally lifted, the other overwritten." I let a smile ghost across my lips. "How fortunate you caught it. Please freeze all joint access immediately." "Yes, ma'am, already done." When I hung up, I whispered to the empty room, "And that's how you start a storm," with a polite tone. Downstairs, I spotted them at the reception desk. Lydia's hair was pulled tight. Daniel's shirt was wrinkled. They were whispering fiercely, gesturing toward their phones. He looked pale, the color of consequence. I didn't need to eavesdrop to know what was happening. Credit cards declining, account access denied, a polite email from the lawyer asking for verification. I walked past them like a breeze. "Morning, kids," I said, as if we just arrived for brunch. Daniel turned. "Mom, what did you do?" "Nothing," I said sweetly. "But isn't it funny how the truth does its own paperwork?" Lydia stepped forward. "You can't just—" "Oh, but I can," I interrupted softly, "and I already did." Then I leaned in just enough for her to feel the edge in my tone. "You should have learned the difference between a signature and a surrender." I didn't wait for her reply. I had somewhere else to be. By 10 a.m., I was at the lawyer's office. A small, sharp man with wire glasses and the patience of a saint. He'd seen my name in the morning emails. "Mrs. Harper," he said, "you move faster than most people in crisis." "That's because I spent 30 years practicing calm," I replied. He reviewed the files on his screen. "This is strong. Audio, documents, timestamps. I can have the court injunction ready by tomorrow." "Tomorrow's fine," I said. "Let them twist a little first." He smiled. "Revenge? Restoration," I corrected. "Revenge ends. Restoration lasts." When I left his office, the sunlight felt different. Warmer, maybe, or maybe I was just unburdened. Freedom isn't fireworks, it's the quiet knowledge that you don't owe explanations anymore. At lunch, I found an envelope slid under my hotel door. No name, no note, just a single room key and a folded receipt. I recognized the handwriting, Lydia's. Her message was simple: "Please meet me, alone." I almost laughed. The same woman who left me at a gas station was now the one asking for privacy. Curiosity won. I went. Room 412, curtains drawn. She stood by the window, pacing like a caged thought. "Thank you for coming," she said quickly. "Daniel's losing it. He's blaming me for everything." "Convenient," I said. "You did most of it." She flinched. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Far?" I smiled faintly. "You tried to erase me." Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. "We just wanted to secure things before you changed your will." "Ah," I said. "So you were planning ahead. How thoughtful." She took a step closer. "If we fix this now, maybe it doesn't have to become public." Her tone trembled, not from guilt, but from fear. I tilted my head. "You think you can bargain with the person holding the evidence?" She swallowed hard. "Please, I can make Daniel sign whatever you want. Just don't ruin him." I looked at her for a long time. Really looked. The perfect posture, the rehearsed sorrow, the ambition disguised as panic. And for the first time, I didn't see a rival. I saw a frightened woman who built her worth on someone else's weakness. "Lydia," I said softly, "you already ruined him. I'm just cleaning up." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I left before she found one. By evening, the hotel corridors were buzzing. Someone had called the bank again. Someone else was crying by the elevator. Whispers travel fast when they smell scandal. I returned to my room, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark. Not out of sadness, but out of satisfaction, because silence after chaos is proof of control. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You don't know what he's capable of." No name, no emoji, just threat. I smiled. "Finally," I murmured. The next move. The message, "You don't know what he's capable of," kept replaying in my head long after the phone went dark. Not because of fear, but because of precision. That text wasn't panic, it was warning. And Lydia didn't send warnings. By dawn, I'd traced the number. A prepaid phone bought 2 towns over. A man's name on the receipt. A name I hadn't heard in 15 years. Mark Weaver. Mark had been Daniel's old business partner. The one who vanished after an accounting error cost them both a fortune. I'd always believed Daniel's story. Mark fled, guilt-ridden, ashamed. But now? Now I wondered if Mark hadn't disappeared. Maybe he'd been erased. I called the number again. No answer. Straight to voicemail. But the outgoing message chilled me. "If this is about Daniel Harper, you were right." That was all. No name, no tone, just those words, clean and final. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart steady, mind racing. The betrayal wasn't just domestic, it was generational. My son hadn't just learned deceit, he'd inherited it from his father. I opened an old folder buried deep in my emails, one I hadn't looked at since my husband died. Receipts, transfers, legal drafts, his signature next to Mark's. My name forged underneath both. That's when it clicked. Mark hadn't stolen from Daniel, they'd stolen from me. For years, my savings, my inheritance, even the house title had been funneled through temporary business accounts. When my husband died, Daniel just picked up where his father left off. Lydia wasn't the start. She was the continuation. And suddenly, the gas station made perfect sense. It wasn't impulsive cruelty. It was a test run to see how easily I'd vanish. I laughed, a low, humorless sound. "My son," I whispered, "you should have checked your bloodline. I don't disappear, I adapt." By 9 a.m., my lawyer called again. "Mrs. Harper, I found something you'll want to see." He emailed a document, a property transfer draft from 2 months ago. Buyer, Daniel Harper. Seller, Margaret Harper. Witness signature, Lydia Carter. I hadn't signed it, but there it was. My name, clean as daylight, in ink that wasn't mine. "Do you want me to file for fraud?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let them sweat. Let them wonder who's talking." I went down to the lobby and found the concierge. "Would you do me a favor?" I asked sweetly. He nodded. "If a couple asks to check out early, tell them the system's offline. Keep them here." He smiled knowingly. Understood. Back in my room, I prepared the second email. Subject, to Mark Weaver. Re Daniel Harper. Body, I think we've both been robbed by the same man. Let's compare notes. I hit send and waited. Minutes later, my screen blinked. Reply received. He was alive and furious. His message was short but sharp. "Meet me tonight, Dockside Cafe, 8 p.m. Bring proof. I'll bring mine." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I smiled. Perfect. By evening, the hotel corridors were whispering with rumors. Daniel and Lydia hadn't come down all day. The staff avoided my eyes, as if they already knew something had shifted. Because it had. At 7:45, I walked to the cafe, the kind of small-town place where secrets look ordinary. Mark was there, older, leaner, but his eyes still had that steel glint of someone who's survived betrayal before. "You look good for a ghost," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He smirked. "And you look dangerous for a mother." We exchanged files, notes, dates, everything lined up, every theft, every signature, every lie. All roads led back to one place, Daniel's hands. "He used my name to pull money through a shell company," Mark said, then disappeared, told everyone I'd lost it. I nodded. "He used mine to cover the taxes. He built his entire world on borrowed names." Mark leaned back. "You gonna ruin him?" "No," I said. "I'm gonna unmask him. There's a difference." He grinned. "I'll drink to that." We sat in silence for a while, the sea humming outside. Then he added quietly, "There's one more thing. Lydia's not who you think." I frowned. "Meaning?" "She wasn't just Daniel's accomplice. She was your husband's too." The words landed like a slap. "What?" He nodded slowly. "Years ago, before he passed, she was his assistant. Same pattern, same transfers. She's been in this game longer than you realize." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Every betrayal suddenly stretched backward, linking my husband, my son, and Lydia in one unbroken chain. It wasn't just a family story anymore. It was a legacy. Mark's voice softened. "You're not just fighting Daniel, Margaret. You're ending something your husband started." For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I smiled faintly. "Good. It ends with me." When I returned to the hotel, their room was empty. Drawers open, clothes gone. Cowards always run before the verdict. But on the desk, they'd left something. Maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. A key card. My name embossed in gold letters. Attached, a note in Daniel's handwriting. "Mom, you win. Just don't come looking for us." I laughed softly. "Oh, Daniel," I whispered. "You still don't understand. I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for myself." The next morning, I didn't dress like a victim. I dressed like someone attending a meeting, which technically I was. The meeting where lies come due. The lawyer's office sat across from the courthouse, glass walls gleaming like confession booths. Inside, Daniel was already waiting. No Lydia, no charm, just my son. eyes hollow, hands restless. He didn't stand when I walked in. "Mom," he said quietly, "you shouldn't have done this." "Done what?" I asked. "Expose the truth or stop pretending you love me while spending my name?" He looked down. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You turned family into business and business into theft." He exhaled. "I was trying to protect what Dad built." I smiled, bitter and calm. "Your father built walls. I built a home. You just inherited his habits." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harper, Mr. Harper, I'll remind you both this is an official review." Daniel snapped, "You don't need to talk to me like a criminal." I leaned forward. "Then stop behaving like one." For a moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, "You were supposed to leave it alone." "And you were supposed to love your mother," I said softly. "We both failed our assignments." He pressed his palms against the desk, eyes glinting. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said. "It makes me free." He laughed, sharp, exhausted. "You always wanted control." "Control?" I tilted my head. "No, I wanted respect. But you only understand control because it's the only language your father taught you." That broke something in him, not anger, but realization. The silence that followed was long enough to feel final. The lawyer spoke first. "We have enough evidence to file the injunction today. Mrs. Harper, once you sign, your assets will be secured." I nodded. Daniel's voice cracked. "So this is it?" "Yes," I said. "This is me stopping the cycle." He leaned back, defeated. "You think you're better than him, than me." "No," I said gently. "Just done pretending we're the same." The paper slid across the desk. My pen hovered for a second. Then I signed. The ink flowed clean, deliberate. Like closing a wound. When I looked up, Daniel's eyes were wet. Not with guilt, but with disbelief. As if the woman who raised him had suddenly become a stranger. Maybe I had. I stood. "You should go," I said. "You'll need time to rebuild, without my name." He didn't move. So I walked to the door, paused, and added quietly, "Next time you build something, try not to use stolen blueprints." Outside, the air felt sharp, the kind that cleans everything it touches. I took one deep breath, then another. Across the street, Lydia was standing by a car, sunglasses on, pretending to text. I crossed over, slow and steady. She flinched when she saw me. "Leaving town?" I asked. She swallowed hard. I thought it was best. "For who?" "For everyone." I smiled. "You mean for yourself?" Her jaw trembled. "You've destroyed everything." "No," I said. "I just stopped funding it." For a moment, her mask slipped, fear peeking through the gloss. She whispered, "You'll regret this." I leaned in, voice calm. I already regretted staying silent. This is peace. Then I walked away. By the time I reached the courthouse steps, rain had begun to fall, soft, cleansing, almost merciful. I didn't run. I let it fall over me, washing away everything I used to carry, their guilt, their excuses, their names. People talk about revenge like it's a fire, but they're wrong. Revenge is a mirror. It doesn't burn you. It shows you what you've become. And standing there, soaked and steady, I saw her, the woman I was before all of this, and I smiled, because for the first time, she wasn't disappearing. She was home. 2 weeks later, my world was quieter. Not empty, just rearranged. The courthouse dust had settled, the headlines had cooled, and the people who once whispered behind my back now whispered about me. It's funny how silence changes shape once it belongs to the one who earned it. I didn't chase press or pity. Justice doesn't need applause. It only needs to be documented. The lawyer called that morning, voice steady. "It's done, Mrs. Harper. The injunction is permanent. The joint accounts are closed. Assets are back in your name." I thanked him and hung up before he could congratulate me. I wasn't celebrating. I was rebuilding. Then came the letters. The first was from Lydia. Handwritten, scented, unnecessary. I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted security. Security. Such a soft word for theft. I tore the letter in half, not out of anger, but completion. Her story ended where mine began again. The second letter was from Daniel. No excuses, just a single line. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I folded it once and kept it. Not as sentiment, but as record. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't a door you open for someone else. It's one you close behind you. By the end of that week, the lawyer introduced me to a charity accountant. He said, "You mentioned wanting to start something. A fund, maybe?" "Yes," I said. "A scholarship. For women who trusted the wrong people." He smiled. "That's poetic." "It's practical," I replied. "Pain should at least pay interest." We filed the paperwork under a new name, the Margaret Harper Restoration Grant. I didn't want statues or speeches, just a steady engine that would help someone else walk out of the same kind of darkness. When the news of it leaked, reporters called. "Was this revenge?" one asked. "No," I said softly. "This was accounting." Still, I wasn't naive. Justice rarely ends cleanly. Some nights, I'd wake to see Daniel's name flash on my phone, then fade before I answered, a number from a distance. A silence asking for something I couldn't give anymore. I never called back. Some debts can't be repaid. They can only be recorded. Months passed. The house that once felt haunted began to feel like mine again. I painted the kitchen yellow, the same color it was when Daniel was a boy. He used to sit on the counter, legs swinging, waiting for pancakes. That memory didn't hurt anymore. It reminded me I'd done my job. I'd raised him to survive. Whether he used that survival for good or greed was his story, not mine. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Mark, the old partner, the ghost of all beginnings. He stood awkwardly on the porch, holding a box. Inside, documents, ledgers, proof of every transaction my husband and son ever hid. "I thought you might want these," he said. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because the truth belongs with the person who can carry it." I took the box. "Are you free now?" he asked. I smiled. Freedom's a daily decision, but yes, I'm learning. That night, I sat by the fireplace and opened one of the ledgers. The ink was old, the handwriting confident, the language of men who thought they'd never be caught. I read every page, not for revenge, but for understanding. Knowledge, after all, is the only inheritance worth keeping. And as the fire crackled, I realized something important. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with sirens or verdicts. It shows up quietly when you no longer flinch at the truth. The next morning, I attended the first board meeting of the Restoration Grant. 5 women sat around the table, strangers bound by familiar pain. One of them, eyes bright with determination, asked, "Mrs. Harper, what made you start this?" I smiled. "A gas station." They laughed until they saw I wasn't joking. Then they leaned in. I told them the short version, the drive, the note, the silence, the decision, no melodrama, just facts shaped like lessons. By the end, one of them whispered, "You turned abandonment into direction." I nodded. That's what mothers do. When the meeting ended, I walked outside into sunlight, clean, forgiving, unbothered. Across the street, a young couple argued beside their car. The woman's face was red, her hands shaking. I caught her eye and smiled. She hesitated, then smiled back. Tiny, invisible victories. That's what justice looks like on quiet mornings. I went home, made tea, and placed Daniel's letter in a drawer, not to keep him close, but to remind myself how far I'd traveled. They left me once on a highway lined with dust and silence, but I reached the destination first, and maybe that's all justice ever is, arriving whole when they expect you to be broken. A year later, the road to Crescent Bay still smelled like diesel and memory. I drove it again, not to look back, but to make sure I could. The same gas station still stood there, paint fading, sign flickering. The pump that once clicked empty now hummed steady. I parked for a moment and watched the cars blur by, strangers on their own timelines, unaware this place once decided mine. It didn't ache anymore. Pain has a half-life. If you stop feeding it, it fades. I went inside. The same clerk, older now, recognized me instantly. "You're the lady from that night," he said. I smiled. "I guess I am." He grinned. "You looked different then." "I was," I said. "I thought I was lost. Turns out I was just rerouting." I left him with a tip and a smile that didn't shake this time. Outside, I could almost hear my son's voice again. "Mom, we'll just grab snacks." But it wasn't a wound anymore. It was a chapter. Some stories don't need forgiveness to end. They just need closure. And mine had plenty. When I got home that night, the house was warm with quiet. On the mantel sat the framed certificate from the restoration grant, the first recipient's name engraved below mine. She'd written me a letter weeks ago. "You don't know me, but because of you, I started over." I'd written back, "That's the point, dear. You don't need to know me to continue the story." The world still turned. The past still existed. But it no longer defined the orbit. Sometimes justice isn't served in courtrooms. It's served in the way you wake up without dread, in the way you laugh again, in the way you stop checking the door for ghosts who left. I made tea, opened the curtains, and let the evening light spill through. The color reminded me of the gas station's glow that night, only softer, kinder. Then the phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I'm doing better, Mom." No name, but I didn't need one. Some bridges don't rebuild, they just stop burning. And that's enough. I typed back a single word. "Good." Then set the phone down, untouched by what-ifs. Because healing isn't dramatic. It's practical. It's steady hands signing new checks in your own name. It's answering the door without flinching. It's looking at your reflection and recognizing her again. They left me once, deliberately. But I found something they never did. Peace that doesn't ask permission. And if anyone ever asks me what I learned from that night, I'll tell them this. The fastest route to freedom isn't revenge. It's clarity. Because when you stop waiting for people to come back, you finally arrive yourself. Stay till the end, I had said. Now that you have, you understand. Sometimes, being left behind isn't the tragedy. It's the rescue. 5 years later, Crescent Bay looks different now. Cleaner, quieter, slower. The same hotel still faces the water, but they've painted the shutters blue. People come here to rest. I came here to remember. The bellboy carried my suitcase, young and kind. "First time visiting, ma'am?" he asked. I smiled. "No." "Just finishing what I started." He didn't understand. He wasn't supposed to. Some stories are meant to end quietly between you and the tide. I walked to the balcony, tea in hand, and watched the highway curve away from town. That same road once carried my family away from me. Now it only brings peace. I thought of Daniel. We spoke again once, briefly. He'd taken a new job, smaller paycheck, slower life. He said, "You were right about Lydia." I didn't say, "I usually am." I just said, "I'm glad you're learning." He laughed. The first real laugh I'd heard from him in years. That was enough. Lydia never wrote again. But sometimes I see her name in old articles. Charity events, social work, reinvention. Maybe we both found peace in different currencies. As for me, I stayed, not waiting, living. Every Sunday, the women from the Restoration Grant gather at my house. We drink tea, share updates, and talk about everything except the men who once defined us. There's laughter now. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't ask permission. One of them asked me recently, "Do you ever regret not fighting harder?" I told her, "You don't win by fighting harder. You win by walking away smarter." She smiled. "You should write that down." I did. On the back of the first letter Daniel ever sent me. Closure. recycled. The sun began to set, soft gold spilling over the balcony. I thought of that night again. The gas station, the taillights, the silence. How it felt like abandonment but turned out to be liberation. People think betrayal breaks you. It doesn't. It just edits your story. Removes the wrong characters so you can finally hear your own voice. I sipped my tea and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for leaving me." Because if they hadn't, I'd never have learned to arrive for myself. If you've ever been left behind by family, by love, or by trust, remember this. Sometimes losing people is how life gives you back your direction. Tell me in the comments, would you have waited at that gas station, or would you have walked away too? And where in the world are you listening from? I love knowing how far these stories travel. And if this story found you when you needed strength, hit like, share it with someone who's healing, and subscribe for more stories that remind you, the quiet ones always rise last.